Well, good
Right.
morning slash afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're coming from. It's 11 o'clock here in Denver. My name is Sam Garlick, and welcome to this quick feature-focused webinar that we'll be presenting for you today. Everyone's trickling in here, so we'll give everyone a chance to jump into the lobby. As you're doing so, feel free to let us know where you're connecting from. So just go to the chat and type in just where you're connecting from so we can see all of the different clients and individuals who are joining us today. For this webinar, I'm excited to have my good buddy Curtis on the call with me as well, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah. Well, I'm Sam's good buddy. My name's Curtis Donater. I'm a technical consultant here at Computronix and involved in doing lots of setups for some of our getting our newer features ready for some of our clients and showing some of the capabilities. So I'm excited to show off what some of these REST services can do and some of the ways that you can integrate them into your systems. Thanks, Sam.
Awesome. And just a quick introduction for myself. If you haven't met me before, my name is Sam. I'm one of the solutions consultants here at Computronix, and that means I get to do a lot of demo presentations, responding to requirements, and connecting you folks with all of the solutions and capabilities of the POSSE platform, the POSSE products that we offer, and some of the services that we provide as well. So excited to be with you today. All right. Well, in interest of keeping this moving, I know people are jumping in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started, and as people trickle in, we'll catch up. The one thing that I do want to say as well as we get started is that we have both the chat feature and the Q&A features enabled for this webinar. So if you've got questions about any of the content or anything related to it, feel free to use Q&A or use the chat. We've got Curtis here, and while I'm doing most of the presentation, he'll be monitoring some of those questions and trying to respond in a timely fashion. So go ahead and use those as you see fit. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the content. So just like the title of this webinar, and when Lee sent this out to everyone, this is the POSSE B2B REST Services is what we're talking about today. And that's a lot of word salad. That's a lot of alphabet soup. So we're going to be breaking it down, trying to make sense. This is really a new configurable feature set in POSSE version 8 that hasn't gotten a lot of love, I think, in some of our breakdowns. So we really wanted to highlight it today and let you folks know how this could really serve your jurisdiction. So today's agenda, what are we going to be talking about? We're going to start with what are these B2B REST services? Why do they matter to me? And what can they do? And then we'll jump into a live demonstration. So that's going to be the fun part. Once we get through a handful of slides here at the beginning explaining what they're all about, we'll jump into actually showing you some of these services in action. And hopefully the goal here is to generate some imagination around your own POSSE solution and what could be further integrated with other systems in the future, currently using this technology. And we'll try to leave some time at the end for Q&A as well. We might highlight a handful of questions if there's a common one in the chat, just to make sure that those are highlighted here on the call as well. And before we get going, quick little warning triangle there, technical content alert. So I know people from this call are coming from both the IT side and the business side, and I want to be sensitive to both. What we're looking at today is a more technical feature. It has to do with programming and automation, interfaces, that sort of thing. But definitely don't fret, because this is really the best part, and my favorite part of my job is when we get to help communicate to people about, hey, here's what your POSSE system does, here's what the technology, the nerdy things that we like to get excited about. I love communicating those in a way that hopefully makes sense to those who are doing the real work, who are doing the business steps, and just want to know how it makes sense for them. So feel free to ask questions as well as we keep going. Additionally, we're going to start off here just by breaking out that whole phrase, B2B REST services, REST APIs, with some key definitions to get started. So that first section there, REST, that's something that if you're a programmer, then you'll be familiar with. If you've not programmed before, you probably haven't heard of it. And this is representational state transfer. And it's really just a kind of a standard way to say, this is a shape of data, and we're going to push it somewhere over a web call. So you'll hear REST services, and that's really just taking data and we're moving it around. It's kind of how computers talk to each other over the internet. API is a part of this as well. So these are B2B REST services are APIs, and that stands for Application Programming Interface. This is something that programmers understand. It's really the way that computers talk to each other. Sometimes there are internal APIs, which are how we program, and we'll use an API when programming, or there'll be a public API or a web API, and that's something that you call using a web request, the same way your browser would open a website, but instead you're calling a particular action from a site. So we've got REST, we've got API, and then we've got B2B, which stands for business to business. What's going to be different about these APIs is that they are no longer on this lower technical level, and instead they are on a higher, kind of more business level understanding, which kind of simplifies and makes more sense from an external perspective and how POSSE integrates with other business systems. So where I want our heads to be here when we're talking about these B2B REST services is it's really a new way to think about integration. I think it's helpful to actually think of these services as a front-end interface, similar to like a customer portal or a staff portal, but those are designed for humans. This is an interface that's designed for computers. So a user interface is designed for humans. It has buttons and visual elements. You can click, you can type, and you can perform actions, and you can view data in a system using a user interface. Well, these B2B REST services act as an interface for computers interacting for the system. That's going to be either data mart services, where you're pulling data into a data lake for reporting, or third-party systems that want to integrate and perform actions inside of POSSE, or even as we go through here, the new fancy word is AI agents, right? And we're excited to have Curtis on the call today. Some of you might have been a part of the webinar last month where we talked through some agentic workflows in POSSE, and we'll get a little chance to see that as well today, taking advantage of these services. And so if you're on the technical side, you're probably going to ask this question by now, which is, why don't you already have REST APIs? Or wait, don't you already have REST APIs? And that's true. We actually have had APIs in the past. And that's how many of your current POSSE system is integrated with a lot of different systems are through our existing APIs, either JavaScript for web, we've got Python for the middle tier, and Oracle level database connections at many of our client sites. And the distinction between these new services and those existing ones really is that the existing ones were lower level building blocks. They were technical and platform level in concept. And so you had to kind of build at a technical level up to the business understanding. These REST APIs are going to be built on a higher level that's really business to business rather than technical to technical. And we'll see that a little bit here as we get going.
Similarly, if I may, Sam, in terms of REST APIs specifically, those of you who are familiar with some of our products in the POSSE suite would maybe recognize that we do have REST APIs that were built for specific purposes. For example, a product like Word Merge, where we can integrate with Word documents and pull data in there. That's powered in the back end by a REST API, but that was a purpose-built REST API that was using some of these lower level APIs like Sam's talking about. So the REST API for Word Merge is built using the service API. What we're talking about now and what you'll get to see is that we get to, with these REST B2B APIs that are built into POSSE 8, you get to build those as simply as you would any other POSSE configuration, as opposed to getting immediately into a technical exercise.
Absolutely. And that moves us into the next point. So how do they work? Well, first of all, if you're done in technical integrations, web integrations before, you'll understand HTTP verbs. So these are REST services. These are endpoints on a website that you call, and they're going to have the standard things you would expect, which are gets, posts, patch, put, and delete are the different verbs, which are really the different ways that you can interact with a system. And when you're configuring these, you can actually set up any number of those different kinds of verbs and actions to take place. They're deployed like any other website within your kind of POSSE web framework. They get just deployed as a service, and that can be in the cloud or it can be on-prem, depending on where you're hosted currently. And all the endpoints that you configure through this setup are hosted dynamically. So it's not like you're setting up a new web service or doing any sort of web code whenever you set up one of these services. You just build it within our stage configuration platform and then refresh your application pool. And when that cache is refreshed, you get to see those endpoints available right away. Another aspect to this as well is that everything that happens in this case goes through our POSSE application server, and that helps make sure that any data changes or any data gets, as it may be, that go through these services go through proper security and data validation. So you're really actually working much like a user interface, but it's really a computer interface that still has the same security and validation you would expect from a portal. So what can they do? Well, one, they can help you simplify complex technical APIs. Previously, if you were using our lower level technical APIs, that required a lot of different calls, a lot of extra code involved. You have to really understand POSSE at a technical level, as long with our programming names. You have to be very specific about just knowing the names and technical architecture of POSSE in order to actually build an integration with our previous APIs and current APIs. But with B2B REST services configured, you can kind of merge all of that into a single endpoint call that has a clear descriptive name. It's purpose-built for this particular action. We're saying, hey, you're like a 311 system and we want to receive some complaints. Here are the APIs specifically for receiving complaints, as an example, just from one simple URL. Additionally, they can expedite development and automation of new services. So part of what I want to help you do today is just reimagine, hey, what are some things that we could automate or we could want to connect our POSSE system with? Just some real world examples that we'll be going over. One would be automatically entering complaints from multiple sources in POSSE, 311 system, or in case we're going to show today, an AI agent. Or synchronizing GL records from a financial system when the chart of accounts changes is something we'll look at, as well as updating a permit or license state in an external event occurs. And rather that being a manual step, we can have an automation take place that goes ahead and updates the state of that license. And that's just faster development in a standardized and maintainable way. And three, this also can really help you establish that digital data market presence. What I've heard from a number of different clients and potential clients is that their public sites get crawled a lot by bots, looking through searches and trying to get access to information and pulling information from their jurisdiction website. And to me, this is kind of like having people peek through your windows to try and see something when you could just have a really nice front door and reception desk. And that's really what we want to help you establish, is saying, hey, you don't need to crawl our website. You can talk to us. We have some endpoints of where you can come and get access to the information that we have control over. You can control who can access it. You can control what they can access. There's a market out there for this sort of kind of data, and people want to trust data that comes from their jurisdiction because they know they can trust it. So how can we get out ahead of that and really support our public in that way? But with that, we're going to jump into the live demonstration here. So if there are no significant questions, I'll pause for one moment in case, Curtis, you got something that you feel like we need to mention. If not, I'm going to jump into demoing.
The only thing that I'll mention is just as a reminder for our attendees that because we have the Q&A feature, if you've got questions along the way, feel free to post them in there. We'll probably get to most of them at the end, but we'll have a few spots throughout the presentation where we might answer those. So if you've got anything burning, feel free to post that there. And otherwise, if you're waiting till the end, that's fine as well.
Perfect. Well, I've changed my browser screen over to what we're going to look at as our first visual today. And this is a REST API kind of home base. So once you have this service set up, you have a POSSE 8 environment, and this service is running, you're going to have access to a page that looks like this, which is giving us access to jump into services in any of these three areas. We've got scheduler services, which are batch operations. We've got data mart services, which is a completely pull model of, hey, what data is available to pull into a data mart? And then we have the API, which is everything else, connections, data changes, purpose-built things. A lot of what we're talking about today is going to be in this API section, but we'll get to that in a second. We're going to look at data mart and scheduler first. And jump into that. So I'm going to click into the data mart API section. And what we're going to see is a list, and this is a long list because this is basically everything that we would traditionally pull into a data mart available here from get endpoints, which means someone is reaching out to this site and pulling information. Now, this site is generated on the fly. Anytime we perform configuration to the REST services within Stage, you can just quickly refresh, and this site is going to show any new services and any changes to those services. If we open up one of these, we'll see which values we can request from it. We can actually execute and test any of these services live here, and this is actually how we'll be interacting with the system primarily here to start. So let's see it in action. Let's go ahead and call one of these endpoints. In order to do that, we do need to authorize. So this is more of a technical piece, but when you want to use some of the data here that's available through the B2B REST services, you do need to use a POSSE account, and it authenticates using what's called the credentials flow. So you can do this systematically where your system reaches out to this token service and provides the credentials, and then the response back that you get is a token that allows you to call any of these endpoints. And that token is also based on your credentials, so it's going to only let you have access to the things that your user would have access to. It goes through our role-based security layer. So just for an example, let's go to our brands here in our POSSE ABC system and just go quickly look at them. There's a feature here where you can only synchronize based on the last time that you synchronized by putting a date and saying, hey, just give me only the data from this past point, which is great for regular synchronizations. But in this case, I just want to see all the records. So I'm just going to remove that date and click execute. It's going to tell me what command it just ran. And if you're technical, you'll kind of appreciate what's going on there. This is the URL hit with a certain page limit. And then down here is actually the response where it's actually pulled data from all of the brands that currently exist in our ABC system. We've got date information. We have the names of the different brands. We have the state, are they current, compliance with TTP, COLA, that sort of thing. All available here. And you have the control over what data is available and what sort of related information is also pulled in. You'll see things like these license XREFs are pulled in as well. So if you were pulling in a bunch of different data, you can actually maintain that relational model in wherever you would like to report with this information. But let's show this in a more business context. So that was just kind of testing here through our generated, called Swagger interface is what this is called. But let's go to something else where we might actually want to pull information into. Just because everyone's familiar with it, we're going to do it through Excel here. And I've gone ahead and set up a table here for license data, and I have a web query set up here, and I can show that briefly, but I'm going to start by just clicking refresh, and that's going to go out to these REST services, grab the information, and populate our table.
This is one of these things where what Sam doesn't know is that I've secretly been creating mountains of data in the background, so it's going to take so much longer than I did the first time he tried it. I think, but what this is showing is that also the capabilities of being able to pull a lot of data into whatever source that you're looking for. So just to talk about the nature of the data mart services while this is still refreshing. Previously, Posse had a built-in feature that most of you will be aware of called Corral, which was our data mart solution, which was restricted to Oracle databases. Basically, you could have a data export that was going into an Oracle database, usually through a database link between the Posse database and your data mart database. And then any other data mart technology that you might want to use, if you wanted to put that data into another database technology, you would have to synchronize from the Oracle database to that other technology, whether that other technology is just another relational database that you're more familiar with, or that your business intelligence tools would work with, or whether it was an entirely different model and you wanted to do a non-relational database format. What the data mart services allow you to do is, rather than having to design everything to go into an Oracle relational database in the first place, you create these services, you create the endpoints. And as Sam was demonstrating, they have all of the interlinking capabilities to say, okay, well, you're going to need to call this other data mart service in order to get the data from this. And then you can synchronize that with whatever database you want, including, like in this case, Microsoft Excel.
Yep. Perfect explanation, Curtis. And actually, it was that I had a window open and that was actually preventing the query from taking place there. So once it closed that, it actually closed out. And now we have all the rows populated from that service. And now it's in Excel, so we can do what we need to with it. We can create form letters. We can push this data out somewhere else. And you can just kind of swap in Excel for whatever system you would like to populate with Posse data and report on. Speaking of reporting, I went ahead and set up a tab ahead of time here to report on some of the data that we have, just to kind of visualize that idea of ad hoc reporting based on what you've retrieved from Posse. But let's go ahead and keep moving. So that's a little bit about these data mart services, and that's only one section of the system. There are also scheduler services. So this is something where we've gone ahead and kind of moved our previous Oracle-based scheduler into a web-based scheduler. And because of that, we now have the ability to just expose API of potential batch scripts that you may want to trigger within the system. So an event takes place outside of Posse and you want to trigger a batch operation, you can do that here. I have a really simple one set up, which is to acknowledge all reminder tasks. So reminders are tasks within Posse. And if I come over to my to-do list here, I've got a few reminders here within the Posse staff portal, and they've been outstanding for a long time. And so maybe we just want to clean up all these reminder tasks that have been hanging out there and really just need to go away. To do that, all we have to do is trigger this acknowledge all reminders operation. And there's not really anything else I need to add here. I just need to call that endpoint. And I think I do actually need to re-authenticate. So it does have a time limit on the token, which is what we actually saw here, which is that my first authorization did time out, and that's for security purposes. So if we execute it this time, now we actually get a special status token, and it's telling us, yeah, we've started that operation. It's occurring in the background. And if we wanted to go check in on the status of that operation, we can use this token with a conjoined special get feature. So this one was called a patch level. This one is a get, which is go get the status of this thing. Hey, is this batch operation going? Is it failed? Is there errors? What's taken place? All we have to do is put in that status token. And oh, this one actually failed. Oh no, that was actually not part of my demo script, but we do actually get to see what it looks like when an operation goes. So it actually ran into an issue with Posse. There actually wasn't a valid outcome for one of those processes. And in that case, it went ahead and failed, and it let us know that. We can view the same operation here. If we took a look at this acknowledge all reminders here in the staff portal as well, we could go see the history of when we've run this batch operation and what's taken place.
Just for a little context on what you're seeing there, so that scheduler is the UI portion of the new REST service scheduler services. Is that within Staff UI itself, we have a UI where we can see all of the scheduled items and you can add new scheduled items that are from the scheduled services. By having all of these scheduled services as a REST API, though, you can choose to use the POSSE scheduler, but you can also choose to use another scheduler. You could use cron, you could use Windows Task Scheduler, any service that you like. So if you have, for example, very strange intervals at which you want to run scheduled tasks, every 17 minutes or every week and a half, then you can use your own tool to trigger the scheduled item and get all of the status information and everything that you would expect to have in order to monitor whether that scheduled item has successfully completed or not.
Absolutely. So that's a little bit about the scheduler services. I'll jump in here then to the third section, which is really the kind of the meat of this, in my opinion, which is the REST APIs. We're setting up a way for systems to take action inside of POSSE and do some really cool interfaces. The three scenarios that we have set up here, one is from a financial tracking system for GL accounts. One is a kind of set of endpoints for a 311 complaints interface that we'll be showing here in a moment. And one is a system to suspend licenses from a tax system. So just in the interest of time, I'll show this one here. So we need to suspend a license. So the story here is that maybe somebody's tax records have gotten out of whack and they didn't pay their taxes and they're now in debt to the state. And because of that, we need to now update legally any licenses to a suspended status automatically based on that change for the legal entity. And this is just creating an endpoint for a tax system to go ahead and trigger that if necessary. So here we have an active license here in POSSE ABC. And what I'm going to do is just take that technical handle, which also might have been available if we were tracking information here from Excel. We can get access to that technical handle for referencing data in the system, or you can reference based on the generated IDs as well, like the file number. But let's go ahead and put that ID in, and we're going to execute. We're going to say we need to suspend this license. And that just happens automatically, comes back through.
Actually, I think you need to authorize again. The way that the Swagger UI is set up is that every time you switch pages, it doesn't persist the token, because these are really just example pages for how you would use this. Normally, you'd integrate this with some other technology, which we will be showing at the end of the presentation here.
Absolutely. So with that, when I properly have a valid token and execute it, it's going to just respond us with a simple message, license suspended successfully. And if I jump back over to that license and quickly retrieve, it's changed to a status of suspended. And it's actually gone ahead and created a note for us as well, which is saying this license was suspended via the API. Now, realistically, I think in a real world scenario, you'd probably do that through like a workflow job, an enforcement job of some kind, just to make sure that's going to someone's to-do list to check it out as well. But there's a really simple example here for this demonstration. But let's go ahead and show one more example here. And that's going to be this complaint system we've talked about a couple times. And to do that, I'm going to hand it off to Curtis to show what this looks like when you use agentic AI and the B2B REST services.
So we have our REST services is the same thing that Sam was just showing us, where we have these 5 different endpoints that are tagged as part of being part of the 311 complaints interface. And I have I've got Claude Desktop installed here. And just in the free plan, just because I want to show like this doesn't require like this from an AI perspective, I'm not doing anything special here, but I am wanting to do something with the POSSE interface, and I have, in order to do that, I've integrated it as an MCP server. I'm going to get into all of this in just a second, but I want to start from the demo, and also because the AI sometimes takes a while to process everything. So let's say I'm having trouble with a bar in my neighborhood. What complaints can I make in the POSSE system? Okay, so this is an AI tool, Claude. And what I've got running here in the background is something called an MCP server. MCP stands for the Model Context Protocol, and which is a bunch, as Sam referenced earlier, that's kind of word salad, but Model Context Protocol, it really just means it's a protocol, which means it's a standard for providing additional context to large language models. In this case, what I've done is with the REST services, the REST services are built on a standard called OpenAPI. And the OpenAPI specification generates this whole technical JSON file that other systems can read. Well, I have taken this, and there's a lovely tool that I like to work with as a technical person. I'm actually going to show you some code today. There's this Python library called FastMCP. And one of the things that FastMCP can do is take that OpenAPI specification and automatically generate an MCP server from it. So basically what I've done is I've said, okay, here's my root URL. I want to get the OpenAPI JSON from it. I'm going to authenticate using a username and password from a local config file. And then I'm creating an MCP server, calling it POSSE 311 complaints interface. And I'm doing this from the OpenAPI spec that was created. And all I'm doing is saying all of these endpoints that are tagged as 311 complaints interface, make them all available as tools in MCP. Then within Claude, I've hooked up this MCP server. So it's actually asking me already, I'll help you find out what types of complaints you can file. And it wants to use the get complaint types tool. And that tool was automatically generated from the here, I'll move this over so we can see all these things at once. I'll move the code out of the way because we don't need that again. But there's this get complaint types endpoint. It created a tool that it knows that it can call in order to determine what types of complaints I can make in the system. And then with a little bit more, once it loads those, it'll show, okay, here's all of the complaint types in the POSSE system. And I'll say, as it's still writing, great, there's a whole bunch of noise happening after 11:30 every day. So I think it's excessive noise. And you write a description for me about noise after 11:30 p.m. And submit an anonymous complaint. Anonymous complaint. So we've already seen it. It already called one endpoint. And what's really neat is that that example that I was showing, the code there, is a very, very small amount of code to be able to do something like this useful. Now, what you might find is that integrating with agentic AI is something that you might want to put a little bit more work into, but even just from the perspective of having an OpenAPI.json, we can get something going. Okay, so it wants to use the create a complaint from my POSSE API 311 MCP server. So I'll say allow once. I could set it to allow all the time. I want to show specifically that I am approving that it's doing these. And so now it's saying, I've successfully submitted your anonymous complaint. It's got a complaint number, it's excessive noise, McCafferty's Bar and Grill, and it's occurring 11:30. And what's great is that I didn't have to even write that description because the AI can do it for me. If I take this complaint number and go back into the POSSE system and search for enforcement jobs with that job number of 10992, there's the complaint that just got created with all of that information. So the real power of the B2B REST interfaces is not just that you can, use the web-based API or, the web-based UI in order to show them. That's just how we demonstrate them. And that's how you can prove that all of these are working. Because there is a little bit of work to, especially for any updates, there's a script involved to apply those updates. But it allows you to then integrate that with other systems like an MCP server, like agentic AI, but that can also allow, I might be getting ahead of you. I think, Sam, you've got some slides on this yet, but it can allow your other third-party systems to be more easily integrated with POSSE through these REST APIs. So Sam, I'll pass it back over to you.
And we really do just have one more slide here, and that's that's for questions. Just in interest of time, we do want to get everyone out of here around 45 minutes on the hour. So at this point, we kind of covered a lot of different stuff there. I think, Curtis, what you were highlighting at the end there was like, yeah, okay, what does this actually mean? What can we do with this? How do we kind of continue this forward and take this thought process? Apologies, my throat gave up on me there. But what I really want to highlight here is that this is kind of another tool set. It's the same way that we were configuring portals, customer portals, staff portals, interfaces for people in the past. We now have the ability to configure for this modern web environment where AI exists and where bots are interacting with our public portals, and we have a lot of different systems that we could really automate a lot. We don't have to do manual tasks for everything anymore. We can use this sort of purpose-built system and configure some of these APIs in a way that really makes sense for our business case. And we saw a few there, but I'm really excited for what our clients are going to consider and think about and be creative with this setup, and what sort of things they're going to build that I haven't even thought about yet. That being said, so let's jump into a couple of these questions. I think there was one
So the
here.
first question that we've got
go
was just the question, will we get a recording of this demo?
Yep, we're definitely recording this, and we can send it out to everybody post. As soon as this is done and is wrapped up, we'll make sure that message goes out to all the attendees about this demo, so you can share it with whoever else you think in your organization might be interested.
Sure. I've got a couple of questions here. So there's one question in the chat is about new features in POSSE 8, and wondering well, basically, I'll answer this question, which is to say, so all of these REST services, these are a new feature within POSSE 8. So this webinar is specifically talking about this new POSSE 8 feature, which is the REST API services and the B2B APIs. We have a couple of other webinars that have already been done that show some other POSSE 8 features, the recordings of which can be sent to you. I also know that in the chat, we don't necessarily see everyone's names. So if you're interested in seeing webinars and demos of other POSSE 8 systems, please do reach out to your account manager, because we have other presentations that we've done and we can send that information there. So we have another question just about my demo around the Claude tool and where that's available. So just to clarify that, because I'm not sure whether the answers to the questions have gone out to everyone. Claude is a completely separate tool from any POSSE systems. It's actually just a publicly available AI chat tool that runs locally on your desktop. So anyone could, download that today. It is not, I should say, it's not officially endorsed by Computronix or anything like that. It's just the tool that I was using to show this. But specifically what you're looking for, if you're going to integrate with AI agents using a tool like what I was showing, you need an AI tool that is an MCP client. So that, again, that ability to provide additional context to LLMs, and Claude Desktop is just a good example of that. We've got another
I've got a question
question.
as well on, yeah, sorry, the end-to-end
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
architecture model, about how the API security works and identity and authentication works. Um, I'll speak to that briefly. So this is really using, we called that credentials flow earlier and kind of showed that token methodology, but that's really just kind of one layer on top. And then that's really just referencing the same POSSE application layer that's done authentication and user role and for data manipulation that's existed previously. So it's just kind of one more
Actually,
layer built on top there.
I'll jump into that for a second, Sam. So what we're showing right now is one example where we're using an OAuth token service that is automatically provided by the B2B APIs, where we can use essentially like your standard POSSE authentication, but that is not the only authentication model. And in fact, it's not even necessarily the expected authentication model. It's just a useful one for showing in a demonstration like this. What you normally do when you're configuring the B2B services, when you deploy them, you'll actually choose an external OAuth provider. And we have configuration settings to allow you to do that, where you will first authenticate using some external identity management service, and then those credentials will come back into POSSE to be able to figure out the handshake and authenticate you ultimately back to a POSSE user. But you don't need to use like a POSSE username and password. You can actually use an external identity management service. So I don't have an architectural diagram for that right now that I can just pull up. But essentially, you go to identity provider, comes back to POSSE. POSSE will negotiate that identity and translate that into a POSSE user for you.
And that's something that certainly can be provided as well. If you want to see an actual diagram, we can connect after this and figure out what that would look like to provide.
The last question here, can we build our own REST services in Stage, or is it limited to what's provided by Computronix?
The answer to that is a resounding yes. Yeah, all of these things that you saw today were set up just in Stage. So if you're already used to using Stage for configuring parts of your system, you can do this as soon as you're into POSSE 8. That's available. And really everything that you saw today was set up in time that is measured in hours, not days. It is very quick to do. And, the more complex you get, the more time you can end up spending on it. There's some custom scripting involved if you want to do some really complex actions and some logic, filtering, that sort of thing. Excuse me, but realistically, if you're used to using Stage, it will be very familiar to you and available right away.
One last question for the end here. So is just how much of this is pre-built or easy to build rather than a full-on integration project with Computronix? So once again, that has to do with your engagement model with POSSE and Computronix. For any of our enabled clients who are already comfortable using Stage, as Sam just said, you can get in there and start doing that immediately. If you're not an enabled client, you can talk with Computronix about what that process of enablement looks like, or you can work with Computronix in order to get these services up and running. But the idea then as well is once you have the services in place, then any other integrations that you want to make, like for example, what I was showing with the agentic AI stuff, once those services are in place, then I can do anything that I want with them. So it's kind of a step to having these business ready APIs.
Yeah, and I think an advantage of that is that when you build like that 3-1-1 system we kind of saw set up, you can take advantage of that in multiple ways. You could have a 3-1-1 system pull in complaints. You could have AI pull in complaints. You could do them from a lot of different places, and all just take advantage of the fact that you've set this up once and it's available for as many different things as want to connect to it. Well, with that, we are at time. Thank you so much to everyone who took time out of their day to hang out with us and be a little nerdy on some of the technical things that Curtis and I know are super excited about. So thank you for your participation. We wish you a great rest of the day, and do feel free to continue to reach out, use your account manager, find someone in your organization who knows who the account manager is, and bug them to reach out, and we'd be happy to explain further, provide diagrams, that sort of thing if you're still more interested in learning more. All right. Well, thank you all. Again, my name is Sam. Hope you have a great rest of your day.